Suge Knight is one of the few names in the rap music industry that inspires the same level of dread in the hearts of musicians as any other name. Knight was notoriously the previous chief executive officer of Death Row Records. He was renowned for his combative strategies and was reported to have been involved in violent occurrences all across the music business. On the other side, there have been a few rappers who have never bowed down to Knight and have resisted the attempts at intimidation made by him. The careers of some of the most renowned rappers who never frightened Suge Knight will be discussed in this video. Without further ado, let's get into it. Tupac Shakur is often regarded as the most renowned rapper who has dared to challenge Suge Knight. While the two men were good friends and often worked together, their partnership was not without its share of conflict and tension. Tupac Shakur signed a recording deal with Suge Knight's Death Row Records in 1995 when he was serving time for a sexual assault conviction. Knight was the owner of Death Row Records at the time. Tupac always claimed that he had made the choice on his own, in spite of persistent reports to the contrary, which suggested that Knight had coerced Tupac into signing the pact. Tupac's allegiance to Knight was put to the test in 1996 in Las Vegas when he was the target of a drive-by shooting that left him with several gunshot wounds. Tupac remained unwaveringly faithful to his buddy until the latter's death only a few days after the shooting, despite the fact that some people have suggested that Knight may have been complicit in the shooting. Ice Cube was another rapper who stood his own against Suge Knight and never backed down. He was a member of the iconic group NWA at the beginning of the 1990s. At the time, the group's relationship with Suge Knight and Death Row Records was fraught with tension. Despite this, Ice Cube continued to be outspoken in his opposition to Knight's techniques and never let himself be frightened by them. In point of fact, Ice Cube recounted a moment when Knight threatened him with physical violence in an interview he gave in 2012 to the Huffington Post. Case in point, "I responded, 'Dude, you can't intimidate me. My hometown is in South Central. You are not going to do anything to me that I have not previously experienced,' I replied," he said. Dr. Dre was another musician that defied Suge Knight, despite the fact that the two men had worked closely together at Death Row Records. Dre and Suge Knight were both signed to Death Row Records. Dr. Dre parted ways with the record label in 1996 to launch his own entertainment firm, Aftermath Entertainment. This decision was seen as a direct threat to Knight's authority, and many people anticipated that Knight's allies would go after Dr. Dre as a result. Despite this, Dre was unmoved and continued to speak out against Knight's aggressive actions in the business. The rapper made these comments in an interview with Rolling Stone in the year 2015. "I did not feel any fear in his presence. Simply put, I had no desire to be in his company." Snoop Dogg is a prime illustration of this phenomenon and is one of the most famous. Snoop has been transparent about his connection with the notorious CEO of Death Row Records, despite the fact that he was signed to Death Row Records at the height of Knight's rule. Snoop Lion referred to Knight as a father figure in an interview he gave to GQ. Knight was instrumental in guiding Snoop through the competitive music business, but despite the closeness of their connection, Snoop has never been one to shy away from expressing his opinions. In a recent post on Instagram, he criticized Knight for his actions in the past and said, "I don't condone that shit, and I don't condone you." Knight has since deleted the post. One of the most well-known rappers of the 1990s, Notorious B.I.G, was revered for the silky flow of his music as well as the roughness of his words. Biggie never had any fear of Suge Knight, despite the fact that he was signed to Death Row Records, which was owned by him. In point of fact, he mentioned Knight in his song, "Who Shot Ya?", which many people took to be a diss track directed at Tupac Shakur and which he had written. It's possible that Biggie's East Coast upbringing and his dedication to his own record company, Bad Boy Records, contributed to his self-assurance in confronting Knight. He was supported by a formidable group that included Sean Diddy Combs, who was well known for his astuteness in the economic world and his capacity to safeguard his musicians. Biggie's life was brutally cut short in 1997 when he was murdered in a drive-by shooting. His death was a devastating loss to the world. It is evident that Biggie's lack of fear in the face of Knight had a significant and long-lasting effect on the music business, despite the fact that we will never know whether Knight had any hand in the death of Biggie. James Todd Smith, better known by his stage name LL Cool J, is a renowned rapper who has been active in the industry since the 1980s. He has received a great deal of acclaim during the course of his career due to the fact that his flow is very fluid and his lyrics are quite hard-hitting. LL Cool J never had any fear of Suge Knight, despite the fact that Suge Knight was well known to be a menacing character in the music business. In point of fact, LL Cool J was one of the few rappers who openly voiced their opposition to Suge Knight and the methods he used. LL Cool J denounced Knight's role in the East Coast-West Coast conflict that eventually led to the killings of Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G. in an interview that he gave in 1996 to MTV News. The interview was conducted by MTV News. In addition to this, he criticized Knight for his purported participation in a variety of unlawful endeavors. Corrupt was another artist that was signed to Death Row Records during Suge Knight's stay there, and he is on record as having publicly defended Knight. On the other hand, he has also expressed his disagreement with some of Knight's more contentious activities. Corrupt expressed his displeasure with Knight, stating that he was disappointed in him for not doing more to prevent it in an interview with Vlad TV. Corrupt referred to Knight's role in the death of Tupac as fucked up. DJ Quick is a prominent rapper and producer from the West Coast. He has collaborated with many of the most well-known artists in the business, including Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, amongst others. In the middle of the 1990s, he was also temporarily associated with Death Row Records, but he parted ways with the company following a conflict with Suge Knight. Despite the fact that he and Knight have fallen out of favor, DJ Quick has never been shy to say what's on his mind about Knight. In a recent interview with The Breakfast Club, he referred to Knight as a coward and said that he was to blame for a significant amount of the violence that occurred in the rap business in the 1990s. In addition to being one of the most successful rappers in the history of the music business, 50 Cent is famous for the reckless manner in which he conducts himself. He has gone through a lot in his life, including being shot a total of 9 times. But he has never allowed any of it to deter him from working toward the goals he has set for himself. In point of fact, it simply served to fortify him. When 50 Cent was just beginning his career in rap, he was signed to Interscope Records, which was at the time controlled by Dr. Dre, one of Suge Knight's competitors. 50 Cent and Suge Knight found themselves in a tense situation as a result of this. But 50 Cent never backed down. Despite the fact that he was the target of threats and other attempts to intimidate him, he persisted in his musical endeavors and built a successful career. In point of fact, 50 Cent has referenced Suge Knight in a few of his songs and taken digs at him. His lyrics, "I'm not Rich Porter, I'm not Alpo, I'm not John Gotti, I'm something like Gotti," can be found in the song Back Down. This statement was a clear allusion to the term Godfather that was given to Suge Knight. 50 Cent was able to avoid any negative consequences as a result of this risky decision and maintained his ascent to prominence. Ultimately, 50 Cent's fearlessness and persistence have been huge factors in his success as a rapper, and both of these traits have contributed immensely to his success. He never gave anybody the power to scare him or prevent him from doing what he set out to do. That's all for today's video, guys. If you like our content, feel free to subscribe to the channel, share, and hit the notification bell to get the latest news from us. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.